By 2013, investigators with the Massachusetts State Police Department had devoted 2 years to an unsolved homicide case in Hampton County. The deceased was a 20-year-old woman. Initially, the investigation appeared straightforward. Yet law enforcement found themselves repeatedly reviewing the same evidence for years, cycling through information until a crucial, minute detail emerged, which ultimately allowed them to piece together the perpetrator's identity. In 2011, a distressing call reached the Hampton County, Massachusetts Police Department. A 26-year-old man, Seth Green, contacted them, sounding profoundly distraught and audibly weeping into the phone. Seth informed dispatchers that he had discovered his girlfriend unresponsive on the kitchen floor of her Chacopa residence, displaying no vital signs. Despite his strenuous efforts, the boyfriend failed to revive her. Dispatch immediately deployed emergency services, and law enforcement personnel, along with an ambulance, swiftly reached the location. Upon their arrival, they found Seth curled in a fetal position on the back porch, weeping. He was visibly breathless and didn't respond to the officers' inquiries, merely gripping his cell phone. Proceeding through the house's hallway, police officers located Amanda. Regrettably, assistance was already futile for her. Paramedics confirmed her demise, but what particularly shocked them was the sheer brutality of the girl's slaughter. Blood spatters extensively coated the kitchen walls and furniture. It appeared the assailant had mercilessly brutalized her, likely employing some implement to inflict such severe mutilation. Forensic specialists conducted an examination of the deceased at the crime scene, revealing an extensive array of fatal wounds. The sheer number of injuries made it impossible for experts to pinpoint which one caused the victim's death most rapidly. Her wounds were classified as stab wounds. Amanda was clad only in her underwear during the assault, yet no indications of sexual assault were present. It was probable she was simply moving about her home in that attire. It seemed she was ambushed while beginning to dress, evidenced by her wearing socks and partially pulled-up pants. A shattered living room window was discovered at the location, suggesting the attacker's entry point. Furthermore, a sequence of bloody shoe prints indicated the perpetrator's exit via the same route. The boyfriend's claim that he had already discovered her deceased was partly substantiated. Upon the police's arrival, forensic experts determined, through the examination of the scene and the body's condition, that she had been deceased for several hours. Specifically, most bloodstains had already congealed by the time officers appeared. An officer present at the scene relayed the tragic news to the girl's parents, a revelation that profoundly shook the entire family. Amanda was not known to have any apparent adversaries. She was widely regarded as the life of the party and easily endeared herself to nearly everyone. It was inconceivable that Amanda could have merited such a fate. The focus then shifted to Seth, needing to ascertain if Amanda's boyfriend was genuinely truthful and bore no involvement in the incident. Once Seth composed himself, he was transported to the nearest police station for interrogation. The distressed boyfriend stated that he resided in the house with his partner, Amanda Plass. He asserted he was at work throughout the day and unaware of any occurrences at the residence. In the evening, upon his return from work, he discovered his girlfriend severely wounded on the kitchen floor, surrounded by a pool of blood. Naturally, Seth became the initial prime suspect, given that such cases often implicate partners. Bloodstains were present on his attire, and he was the one who located her body. Seth convincingly conveyed a sense of desperation when he contacted emergency services, and he appeared genuinely distressed upon the police's arrival. Nevertheless, certain police officers harbored doubts regarding the authenticity of his reaction. Possessing adept acting abilities, he could have orchestrated this tragic scenario purely to mislead the inquiry. The police learned that the victim and her boyfriend had only recently commenced their relationship. Neither her acquaintances nor her family possessed extensive knowledge about Seth, and he could indeed have been a mysterious individual. However, the boyfriend disavowed any involvement, asserting he had been at work all day. He claimed his schedule was so demanding that he couldn't even transport his girlfriend to her afternoon shift. She was employed at a restaurant and failed to report for duty that day. Seth was engaged at a construction site, and subsequent findings corroborated that he had indeed worked an exceptionally busy shift. Police meticulously questioned Seth about the tools he used that day, hoping to identify a potential murder weapon. Given his profession as a carpenter, Seth naturally possessed various knives and other implements for material work. Numerous tools were also stored at Amanda's residence. The man stated that one of his knives had vanished. Upon learning this, investigators immediately seized upon the information. Detectives then began to interrogate the suspect, directly inquiring about his complicity in homicide. However, the man vehemently denied any such possibility, steadfastly asserting he had remained at the construction site throughout the entire day and that the knife could have been stolen by another individual. Seth maintained his affection for Amanda and denied any intention of harming her. Insufficient evidence existed to warrant his arrest. He possessed no prior criminal history, leading to his release, though he remained under suspicion. The absent knife was considered a potential murder weapon and was promptly searched for at the crime scene. Regrettably, the probable murder weapon was never recovered. By this stage, forensic specialists had meticulously analyzed the bloody shoe prints left by the assailant within the house. This became a crucial piece of evidence, as footprints, akin to fingerprints, are distinct and unique to an individual. It was ascertained that the likely killer arrived at the crime scene wearing Nike Air Max sneakers. However, it seemed peculiar that the shoes were a small size, 39.5, which could belong to either a man or a woman. The victim's boyfriend wore a different type of footwear, a larger size. He did not own those specific sneakers, and Seth's palm print did not correspond with the killer's. Furthermore, it was established that the blood on his clothing appeared after he found his girlfriend and, while in shock, attempted to provide her assistance. Moreover, he possessed a dependable alibi, and the man successfully underwent a polygraph examination. These factors collectively led to the removal of all suspicion from him. Despite the detectives' initial hypothesis proving unconfirmed, compelling evidence was present at the crime scene, readily visible, which should have expedited the apprehension of the culprit. But regrettably, this did not occur. By this juncture, the autopsy report for the deceased woman was complete. The medical examiner validated and comprehensively detailed in the report the severity of Amanda's fatal injuries. The autopsy spanned over 4 hours, revealing dozens of stab wounds. Her throat alone had sustained 3 slashes, and the assailant's blade had also penetrated her heart. At least 2 of these injuries were sufficient to cause the victim's death. Considering the state of the blood at the crime scene, forensic specialists established a relatively precise time frame for the murder's occurrence. The most probable time window was identified as between 4 and 5 p.m. on the day the body was discovered. Amanda also exhibited a significant number of defensive wounds, clearly indicating she had mounted a desperate struggle, though the circumstances were overwhelmingly against her. Extensive DNA traces belonging to the likely perpetrator were recovered from the house floor. All collected material was cross-referenced against police databases, yet no match was found, leaving investigators perplexed. Detectives proceeded to delve deeper into the deceased's background to identify potential suspects. Amanda Lindplass was born on December 11th, 1990. Amanda, who grew up in Chicopee, Massachusetts, alongside her brother and sister, was known for her carefree, free-spirited, and friendly nature. This was accentuated by her broad smile and curly, unruly hair. The 20-year-old cherished poetry, enjoyed listening to music, created jewelry, and embraced anything artistic. Amanda demonstrated talent in drawing and taught herself to play the guitar. She also displayed an affection for tattoos, sporting several on her body. She held positions as a waitress and hostess in cafes and restaurants. At the time of the event, she was employed at Franley's restaurant. It was discovered that the 20-year-old maintained a diary, but after reviewing its contents, investigators uncovered no new leads. Amanda was perceived as a kind and gentle young woman, seemingly without enemies. As detectives commenced interviewing potential witnesses in the vicinity of the murder, They canvassed numerous neighbors and acquaintances of the deceased. It was then that officers became aware of Jesse, Amanda's former boyfriend. He was a colleague of hers, and the two young individuals had a brief romantic relationship. According to the girl's friends, their separation was particularly difficult. On one occasion, when Seth arrived at work to collect his girlfriend, Jesse observed them embracing and erupted in a fit of rage. Numerous witnesses corroborated that he had issued threats toward his ex-girlfriend's new boyfriend. This incident occurred merely days before the horrific act. Consequently, Amanda's acquaintances surmised that he might have harmed her driven by jealousy. This presented a promising lead. Following this, investigators resolved to interview her former partner to pose some inquiries. They located the man without difficulty. He confirmed the majority of the witnesses' statements, admitting he was indeed very jealous and reluctant to let Amanda go. However, he also contended that random eyewitnesses to the altercation had significantly exaggerated the situation. He genuinely cared for Amanda, but their relationship was untenable due to clear disagreements and conflicts. Nevertheless, he harbored no intent to harm anyone. Furthermore, the man possessed a credible alibi. At the time of the homicide, Jesse was inside a liquor store, and he had retained the receipt, which was verified. His presence in the establishment was also documented by video surveillance cameras. Despite this, law enforcement officers collected his DNA for analysis and obtained his fingerprints, but these did not correspond with the traces discovered within the victim's residence. Following his second interrogation, Jesse was released, effectively eliminating all suspicions against him. Subsequently, witnesses emerged who stated that around 4:30 p.m. on the day of the murder, a car was parked in front of Amanda's house, operated by a female driver. It was determined that she arrived in an unidentified four-door white sedan, though no one recalled the license plate number or even the vehicle's make. The woman garnered significant attention from the victim's neighbors because she abruptly accelerated and departed in a highly aggressive manner. Some residents asserted they had witnessed this unfamiliar woman enter Amanda's residence. If the perpetrator was indeed female, this could account for the small size of the shoe prints discovered in the murdered girl's kitchen. Law enforcement officials subsequently raised public awareness through the media. The very next day, a young woman named Mercedes came forward. She identified herself as the individual investigators sought, stating that her white sedan was the one observed near her deceased friend's home. She and Amanda shared a long-standing and amicable friendship. On that unfortunate day, Mercedes arrived at Amanda's residence around 4:18 p.m. because her boyfriend was unable to drive her to work. Amanda, already running late, requested a ride from her friend. Mercedes assented, pulling up and waiting outside for Amanda. Mercedes stressed that she did not enter the house, instead waiting in the driveway. She telephoned her friend multiple times, but received no answer. After a short wait, Mercedes left, driving away. She was unaware that her friend might already be deceased inside her own home at that very moment, and subsequently regretted not approaching the door. Certain detectives overseeing the interrogation harbored skepticism regarding Mercedes' account. They inquired why she had not attempted to approach the door and knock, which would have been a perfectly rational resolution to the situation. Mercedes claimed she was rushing to Walmart, hence her decision not to exit the vehicle. However, this detail lacked credibility, as the closest Walmart operated 24 hours a day, rendering any rush unnecessary. Despite the initial skepticism, the new suspect's shoe size proved smaller than the prints discovered in the house, and the young woman successfully cleared a polygraph test. Furthermore, surveillance footage later placed her at a convenience store, leading to Mercedes also being eliminated as a suspect. Detectives once again found themselves with no new leads, their efforts over many weeks and months to locate the presumed killer proving fruitless. A particularly disagreeable incident marred the investigation. It was discovered that several police officers had taken photographs of Amanda's body with their personal cell phones and subsequently displayed them to fellow officers and even bystanders, a practice deemed utterly unacceptable. When this revelation came to light, a scandal ensued. The episode considerably exacerbated relations between the Metropolitan Police and the populace, who were already discontented with the stalled investigation and the unapprehended perpetrator. A perilous criminal remained at large, prompting public apprehension of further victims, with many believing him to be a serial killer. Following a protracted inquiry, the officers who breached ethical standards faced severe reprimand and were additionally compelled to perform several shifts without remuneration. However, what most vexed Amanda's family was not the internal departmental issues, but the police's preoccupation with internal investigations, identifying culprits, and circulating images of the murdered woman, rather than focusing on apprehending the criminal responsible for the homicide and still freely roaming the city streets. Despite the authorities' perceived inaction, Amanda's family never abandoned hope of unmasking a dangerous perpetrator. They persistently distributed flyers, placed advertisements and billboards, disseminated information online, and organized memorial events to maintain awareness of the horrific event. 16 months subsequent to the commencement of the inquiry, police officers opted to return to square one, re-evaluating every element that might have been overlooked. This pivotal decision ultimately led them to discover a minor detail that entirely reshaped the trajectory of the investigation. Prior to this, however, months were spent in meticulous yet fruitless scrutiny of vast amounts of data. By October 2013, approximately 2 years had elapsed since the murder of Amanda Plass, and it had been 2 months since the state police resolved to re-examine the case files. They meticulously cross-referenced interrogation transcripts, suspect alibis, and dozens of photographs and videos from the crime scene. This process spanned months, but on a specific day, detectives successfully discerned a crucial detail within a single photograph. The crucial discovery was an ominous inscription on a marker board. Dennis was here on August 11, 2011. This date was 15 days prior to Amanda being found deceased in her apartment. Until that moment, the name Dennis had not surfaced in the investigation, and his identity remained unknown. Detectives initiated work on this fresh lead. According to Seth, this incident was not the first instance of a stranger breaking into the girl's residence. This individual was a man named Dennis, a short Puerto Rican male who resided near the deceased. Following the initial break-in at her house, Amanda identified the intruder based on information provided by neighbors. Later, the girl herself spotted the intruder on the street. In August 2011, merely days after the first intrusion, Seth moved into his girlfriend's apartment as she no longer felt secure. On another occasion, the Puerto Rican man once again breached her home but was confronted by Amanda's boyfriend, who attempted to detain and resist him. However, the perpetrator succeeded in fleeing. Subsequently, Amanda personally telephoned him, as she was aware of his identity. The young woman sought to arrange a meeting to address his home invasion. Approximately 15 to 20 minutes following the call, Dennis arrived at the house, this occurring in the morning. Seth positioned himself on the back porch, awaiting the perpetrator's arrival, aiming to accurately commit his features to memory. Via this interaction, the victim's boyfriend furnished police officers with crucial new details and provided a description of the perpetrator. The individual who arrived for the conversation appeared to be a Hispanic male, aged between 21 and 23, short in stature, with short hair and a clean-shaven face. The man was slender and communicated proficiently in English. He attended the meeting accompanied by his wife and a child approximately 3 to 4 years old. His female companion appeared considerably larger. Predictably, the Puerto Rican man at the meeting denied any involvement in the incident and claimed ignorance of its nature. He intentionally brought his wife and child to project an image of a respectable family man and to deflect suspicion. The neighbor from across the street observed for a period and then informed Amanda of what he had witnessed. He confirmed that the Hispanic man who had appeared at the meeting was indeed the intruder who had previously broken into her home. The neighbor had initially kept an eye out for the Puerto Rican man himself, but later recognized him as the individual he had seen the preceding night. Amanda sought no conflict, but a cherished possession of hers was missing. The young woman simply wished for the thief to return it. Amanda did not issue threats involving the police or any other repercussions. That said, she swiftly determined culpability, directly accusing this stranger of the theft. He, however, expressed outrage at this development and refuted the accusation of theft. A confrontation was averted. He pledged to return the absent item, and they separated. Subsequently, Amanda was murdered, a circumstance that struck police as far from coincidental. It appeared the investigation would at last gain momentum. Law enforcement had identified a man who had engaged in conflict with the victim. He had also repeatedly displayed hostility toward her and even violated the law. Yet he had escaped repercussions due to Amanda's inherent kindness. He possessed a motive, making Dennis a viable suspect. However, it took the police a considerable amount of time to properly initiate the case, as they possessed only the name Dennis and now needed to identify and locate this potential suspect. By 2013, detectives had narrowed down their focus to two probable suspects. One resided in the neighborhood where the victim of the brutal crime was discovered. His criminal record detailed multiple prior offenses. He surfaced on several police databases, drawing the attention of law enforcement. His particular inclination was violence, indicating a clear capacity to inflict harm upon others. Nonetheless, a significant issue arose. This man was Caucasian, not appearing Hispanic. He was also considerably larger than the described killer, possessing a larger shoe size. He underwent testing, but was subsequently excluded as a suspect. The second individual was a man named Dennis Rosa Roman, who lived a few blocks from the victim's residence. His name, physique, and height aligned perfectly with the description. He also had a larger girlfriend and a son, who was 4 years old at the time of the investigation. Crucially, he was Hispanic. All the details matched. The police sensed this was the man they sought. Investigators cross-referenced the victim's cell phone records and discovered 9 calls exchanged between the alleged killer and his victim. 5 of these were incoming calls, with communication durations varying from a few seconds to 90 seconds. All these calls occurred on July 28, 2011, implying he was the individual with whom the victim had argued. There was one minor, yet significant detail. When Seth was presented with a series of photographs of men, including Dennis, he failed to recognize him, likely due to a poor recollection. Despite this, investigators exhibited keen interest in Dennis and desired to interrogate this new figure in the investigation without delay. On October 26, 2013, police officers successfully located Dennis in the Westfield area. Detectives proposed an interview at the station, but he exercised his legal right to decline, citing extreme busyness. The officers then inquired if he knew a girl named Amanda from the Chicopee neighborhood. The man became noticeably agitated, responding that he knew many women named Amanda from the area and was unsure to whom they referred. Officers proceeded to describe the girl's tattoos and other distinctive characteristics, prompting the suspect to concede that he knew her as a neighbor. He confirmed living a few blocks away, but denied any close association with the deceased. Detectives then intensified their questioning of the young man. At that point, he claimed he was occupied and needed to depart, ceasing further communication. He stated he had urgent matters to attend to, yet promised to present himself at the police station in a few days to speak with law enforcement, a promise he honored. On November 1, 2013, Dennis telephoned the police station. He expressed a desire to disclose something to investigators that had troubled him for days since their previous encounter. He arrived at the Westfield station independently and was subsequently interviewed. He provided a DNA sample for analysis and comparative purposes. Moreover, even during this meeting, the man was wearing Nike Air Max sneakers. However, an examination of the shoe's tread revealed it was a different pair, not matching the one utilized in the young girl's massacre 2 years prior. Nevertheless, detectives surmised that he favored that particular footwear model and that his shoe size corresponded. During his conversation with investigators, the suspect uttered the unexpected revelation that had weighed heavily on him. He disclosed knowing the individual implicated in Amanda's demise. However, the man was hesitant to reveal the name or any further details, fearing he would suffer the same fate as the unfortunate Amanda. Yet, after the initial communication, this narrative shifted. Subsequently, this fabrication of falsehoods progressively expanded with every new utterance. All of the suspects' statements conflicted with the evidence unearthed by the investigation. By this juncture, DNA testing was in progress. Lab technicians successfully matched his DNA to organic material discovered beneath the victim's fingernails. To preclude any inaccuracies, they performed over 20 distinct tests, which unequivocally demonstrated the highest degree of similarity between the skin particles under the deceased girl's fingernails and the samples Dennis provided. This already constituted compelling evidence of his complicity in the murder. Detectives then engaged him more directly, indicating the DNA sample match. Subsequently, in an act of desperation, the suspect attempted to deflect blame onto his younger brother, who had been struck by a bus and died shortly after Amanda Plass's murder. The man contended they shared identical DNA and that his brother was the true perpetrator. Naturally, he was attempting to evade accountability by implicating a deceased individual who could not face repercussions. However, detectives refuted his claims. On November 5th, Dennis was taken into custody and his residence was searched, yet the specific pair of Nike sneakers was not recovered. It was probable that over the 2 years of the investigation, he had already disposed of these sneakers, the murder weapon, or any blood-stained clothing. Neither could be located, likely for the same reasons. Nevertheless, DNA results unequivocally demonstrated his involvement in the violent acts at the innocent victim's residence. The Hispanic man faced charges of first-degree murder. The prosecutor's office sought the most severe penalty, life imprisonment without the prospect of parole. Amanda's trial commenced on July 7, 2016. The defendant steadfastly maintained his innocence regarding the brutal crime. However, the prosecution possessed ample grounds for his conviction. The Latino man had a considerable history of domestic violence, which he had perpetrated against his cohabitant and child. He could reasonably be described as having a record number of police calls concerning his conduct at home. Yet, his actions escalated further. On the day of Amanda's death, he participated in an armed burglary, attempting to steal money and a cell phone from her to procure illicit substances. The robbery was considered the primary motive for the crime. However, the situation spiraled out of control when he encountered the girl inside the house, thereby being exposed. A confrontation ensued, and he utilized one of the knives found in the residence to brutally attack Amanda. Beyond domestic violence and other criminal instances, Dennis was actively involved in distributing illicit substances, for which he had also faced repeated prosecution. Despite the compelling physical evidence, including DNA found under the deceased's fingernails, the defendant did not plead guilty. He now presented a revised narrative. According to him, he was indeed present at the crime scene, but he did not kill the girl. His sole intention was to rob her, leading to a struggle between them. That was how his DNA came to be found beneath the victim's fingernails. However, Dennis claimed he was unprepared for the theft to escalate into a bloodbath caused by another intruder. Simultaneously, he steadfastly refused to name the killer, alleging he faced death threats. Concurrently, the prosecution presented more than just DNA samples as evidence. The size of the defendant's sneakers precisely corresponded with the bloody marks left on the house floor. The palm print on the sill of the shattered window corresponded with Dennis's hand, as did all the analyzed DNA traces. Nevertheless, defense attorneys endorsed the defendant's account. They asserted he was indeed present at the crime scene and witnessed the massacre committed by the killer. At that moment, the man was powerless to prevent Amanda's death and was now compelled to shield the true killer, as he feared for his own life and the well-being of his family. However, no evidence indicated the presence of another individual in the house. No additional shoe prints, fingerprints, or DNA. According to the defendant, the ongoing trial at this stage represented a direct threat to his family, potentially inciting aggression from the actual killer. Furthermore, defense attorneys criticized law enforcement for failing to conduct a sufficiently comprehensive investigation and for disregarding numerous other potential suspect avenues. Independently, The defense highlighted the incident concerning the dissemination of crime scene photographs, which significantly impeded the investigation. During this period, crucial evidence could have been compromised, and this delay hindered the objectivity of the inquiry. Police officers faced intense pressure due to this incident, necessitating a swift resolution to the crime to placate the incensed local populace. Consequently, the police apprehended the first available individual and charged him with murder. Numerous complaints were leveled against the police officers, alleging excessive distraction by internal issues. Many believed that, as a result, they were entirely oblivious to the genuine problem demanding immediate resolution. Dennis himself, in effect, provided the key to the case when he consented to cooperate with law enforcement and offered his DNA sample for analysis. In any event, the jury was tasked with deliberating the substantial volume of information amassed during the case. Court testimony extended beyond 8 days, and deliberations spanned approximately 5 hours, following which the jury unanimously convicted Dennis of the first-degree murder of Amanda Plass. He received a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Both the defendant and his legal counsel reacted with extreme disapproval to the verdict, asserting the sentence was unjust. However, the prosecutor refuted this contention, deeming the sentence merited due to the overwhelming and irrefutable evidence proving Dennis's culpability. Amanda held a particular fondness for sunflowers, leading this plant to become the emblem of a campaign dedicated to amending the law that restricts first responders from photographing and distributing images of victims on personal phones. The legislative bill was enacted in August 2022